This is Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, and I'm going to recap the NBA Draft Combine and the NBA Lottery, which took place this past Tuesday. As you all know, the Pistons slipped 2 spots at the third best overall odds, but they fell down to fifth. And in a draft where a lot of evaluators would say that this is a three-player draft with Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith Jr., and then Paolo Banchero, one would say that falling down to five is a blow for a Pistons team that could still use a lot of talent next to Cade Cunningham and the rest of their young core. However, the Pistons, they don't seem to feel that way. Troy Weaver's on the record saying twice that he doesn't see that much of a talent gap between that top three and then whoever the Pistons could get at 4 and 5. And they have a handful of guys that they're really, really high on, really believe in, and would be happy to draft on June 23rd. So let's just go through that list really quickly. First guy I'm going to go through is Keegan Murray. He's 21 years old. He'll be 22 when next season opens. And the narrative about older prospects is that they tend to not have as high ceilings. But the Pistons don't feel that way about Keegan Murray. He was super, super productive at Iowa last season. Averaged about 22 points, 8 rebounds, shot the ball really well, 40%, 55% overall. And offensively, there's not a whole lot he can't do. He can work in the post. He's a good outside shooter. He's really smart on cuts, knowing when to attack gaps in the defense. He's just extremely versatile. I think the Pistons see him as a guy who can come in and play right away. Defensively, he averaged about 2 blocks. There's some rim protection, but just talking to him at the combine, he also said he's pretty confident that he can be able to switch on smaller players. So I would compare him. They don't have similar games, but I would compare him to a guy like a Desmond Bane, who the Grizzlies drafted toward the end of the first round 2 years ago. Again, Bane was one of the most talented guys in the draft, but he slipped because of his age. And people typically see guys who are around 21, 22, 23 years old as not having a lot of upside. But then Desmond Bane breaks out this year, really thrived as a secondary ball handler next to John Morant. He's an elite shooter. He's a good defender. And if you're doing that draft again, he probably goes top 10, if not top 5. So the Pistons, I think, buy into that belief that age is just a number. At the end of the day, if a guy could play, a guy could play. And Keegan Murray can certainly play, and he's a guy that, if he's there at 5, the Pistons have a hard time turning down. Another guy who they're pretty high on is Jaden Ivy, guard out of Purdue. Ivy is an electric athlete, one of the best athletes in the entire draft. Incredible first step, incredible leaper. Some of his dunks, the way he likes contact, he kind of comes off as like John Morant a little bit. They're different players, but he has that type of athleticism. And Ja, of course, he's caught a lot of bodies, the 2 or 3 years he's been in the NBA. So there's obvious appeal for the Pistons to add that type of athlete next to Cade Cunningham. Ivy starts to round out the rest of his game. He has the tools to be a really good defender, but the effort wasn't always there. The attentiveness wasn't always there. He's a solid passer, but not quite a guy who's a point guard. So he's more of a Donovan Mitchell in that regard. He can work with the ball in his hands, but he's not going to operate with the ball like a Chris Paul or Steve Nash or even like a Ja, going off of that comparison once again. And also, his shooting, he did improve a lot last season. He was around 35, 36%. His last 15 games, that dropped down to about 26%, whereas the first half of the season, he was around 45. So he started off hot, cooled off, and given that he shot around 26% his freshman season, you have to wonder a little bit how much of that shooting progress last season was legit and how much more work does he have to do to get it consistent. So he's a little bit more of a project, I think, than Keegan Murray. But if everything breaks right for him, he can be as good as any shooting guard currently in the NBA. Shaedon Sharpe, another guy like Jaden Ivy, extremely great athlete, jumps out the gym. Shaedon Sharpe's one of those guys that when he jumps, it's almost like he floats. And you pair him with Cade Cunningham again. It's just a really nice contrast. Cade, for as good as he is, a little bit more of a below-the-rim athlete. And to pair him with a guy like Shaedon Sharpe, I think they'll play off each other really, really well. Now, Shaedon Sharpe did not play any college basketball. He enrolled at Kentucky. But because of the NBA rules, he was able to declare for this draft because he met the age requirement without actually playing a single game. So for some evaluators, that's a thing to pause about. How does his game translate to college, let alone the NBA? And his lack of college film makes it tougher to evaluate him. But I don't think the Pistons are very concerned about that. You look at guys in the past like Kyrie Irving, who didn't play that many games at Duke, or Darius Garland, who didn't play a lot of games at Vanderbilt because of injury. But those were extremely talented guys, 5-star guys, and they came into the league and they had no issues making that adjustment at all. So for the Pistons, I think the belief is that Shaedon Sharpe, not to say he has that type of potential, But if everything breaks right for him, he does have all-star upside. And I don't think they're as worried about the lack of college experience as some other teams might be. So he's in play as 5 as well. And then the fourth guy is Benedict Mathurin. Just really your classic 2 guard. He was a very strong shooter during his 2 seasons at Arizona. He's got the tools to be a good defender. He's also a great athlete as well. You could compare him to a guy like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but Mathurin may have more upside with the ball in his hands. He showed some playmaking chops last season. And kind of like Keegan Murray, a guy with a high floor, a guy who will be able to slide in and have a role immediately. But if he could be more of an on-ball guy, really show that he can make the right passing reads and push the ball in transition and whatnot, that takes him to more of a 3-and-D guy to really being an all-around shooting guard. So the Pistons are very happy at number 5. They're very happy with their options. And they have 5 weeks to narrow down their draft board and see who they're going to take on June 23rd. This was Omari Sankofa II from the Detroit Free Press. Talk to you all soon.